Hi, good morning, and welcome to the first episode of Cooking the Books with Kelly, sponsored by the Central Arkansas Library System. And this is just a really fun cooking show that we are bringing to you with the idea of introducing some of the latest cookbooks that are available in our collection. Because they are brand new cookbooks and we are eager to get them onto the shelves to you guys, I do not actually have a copy. I ran up to collections before they hit the floor officially and was able to flip through and check out some stuff. And what I decided to make today is from a new book called Zoe's Ghana Kitchen, and it is by Zoe Adjonoy. I'm going to say it wrong. I'm sorry. I'm probably butchering her name. Adjonia. See, I did it like I kept watching an interview with her name, Zoe Adjonia. And it's a really cool book. And so I found two recipes that I'm going to share with you guys today. The first is a pineapple ginger chutney, and the second is a spiced shortbread. And what I'm going to do is use both of those on a charcuterie board, just to kind of bring some different inventive flavors. So let's get started on the chutney. The first thing I'm going to do, we've got an onion, a red onion whole. So I'm going to cut the top off, get all the skin off. I'm going to leave the bottom intact and get this there we go. I love recipes like this because we've got the sweetness of the pineapple, but it's got some savory elements like this onion, the garlic, and a pepper. Now, this recipe calls for a Scotch bonnet, but I did not find that, so I made a substitution. So I'm just going to take this and cut it straight in half. Lay it down. We're going to leave that root piece intact so that all of that is going to hold your onion together. And I'm just going to carefully slice through it all the way. You'll have to forgive me, I'm a pastry chef. My knife skills are not the best. And then I'm just going to turn it the other way, crosswise, and make a really nice little dice. Okay, and we're just going to repeat with the other one. Come here. Okay, so I'm going to get my onion into the pan with about a tablespoon of oil. I'm using olive oil. You can use olive or canola. Either one will work. And then just using the back of my knife here, get all of that into there. Okay. So next up, it calls for clove of garlic. I'll probably use 2 because I like extra garlic. There we go. Turned it down too low. And it calls for this garlic to be crushed, so I am just going to get all that skin off. And I've got 3 cloves of garlic here. Just gonna make this a little more on the savory side because Who doesn't love a ton of garlic? Now, it also calls for a teaspoon of sea salt. So I'm just going to take this and do that little trick with the garlic. This is really going to help break all of that garlic up. So I put my teaspoon of salt onto the garlic, and then I'm just going to use the side of my knife to kind of rub it together. That salt's going to add a little friction. I'm really going to kind of make a little paste out of this. And just scrape it all up into the pot with our onion. Okay, so this recipe does call for a Scotch bonnet, and I did not find any of that. So what I have here is a habanero, and we're going to take all the seeds out. The thing about a habanero, it's going to have a fairly similar flavor. It's got some fruitiness the same way a Scotch bonnet does, but it does have a hint of bitter to it that the Scotch bonnet does not have. But it is the same heat level on the Scoville. So for that reason, I think this is going to be our best substitute. If you can't find that, you can use a jalapeno. It's going to make it a lot milder. So really just kind of depends on the heat level that you're looking for. Since this is a sweet chutney, we've got the pineapple. We're going to have some orange juice in here and quite a bit of brown sugar. Having this heat isn't really going to, I think it's going to make it really nice. So I wanted to keep that intact. I'm just going to dice it really finely because you don't want to get a big chunk of this, and also get all of those seeds out because the seeds and the membrane are where you're going to end up with a lot of your heat. So if we get that out, it will drastically reduce the overall heat in this dish. Okay. And next up, we need a 2-inch piece of ginger. So the first thing I'm going to do is use the back of a spoon and just try to get some of this skin off of it. It's the easiest way to peel it. You can peel it with a knife, but you're going to lose a lot of the ginger that way. So using the spoon is going to just save so much of your ginger. You're not going to be wasting it. Now, in the book, she does say if you've got organic ginger, you can leave the skin on. I'm honestly not sure what I grabbed, so I'm going to go ahead and get the skin off of it. Also, just keep from having any little tough bits in the chutney. Goodness, excuse me. Wow, that's gonna have some kick to it. Spoon does not like that. Okay, you'll have to forgive me. My stove at home is electric. Gas is a little new for me. Got to make sure I'm keeping that low enough that I can monitor everything really well. Okay, I think that's good. Just going to chop that little end off there, there, and there. And I went looking for a grater, and I found this adorable little guy, and so I'm pretty excited by him. And again, you want to grate this really small. If you don't have a grater, you could chop it, but you're going to have to chop it very, very finely. So you don't want any big chunks of ginger in this. It is spicy in here. If I were cooking this at home, I would probably go ahead and turn my vent on, but that's going to be a little loud, so we're just going to have to manage with the spicy air. And I am always looking for good little shortcuts in the kitchen. I'll be honest, at home, I have a little jar of pre-minced garlic and ginger that I use. So if I were to make this again, I'd probably just use that because it's super easy and absolutely no reason not to. There are times when fresh is really best, but when you're cooking, sometimes just, you know, those shortcuts are worth it. Okay. So let's get all of our ginger into the pot. Okay. So the next thing we have, this is 9 ounces of brown sugar. When I measured it out, it was about 1.25 cups, but you do want to measure it by weight so that you've got exactly what she's calling for. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my 7 ounces, excuse me, 5. Since we don't have the book, I have my recipe over on my laptop just to make sure that I get everything correct. So we've got 5 ounces of orange juice going in with that brown sugar. And then we just need a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Give us a little splash. Yeah. Okay. My onions were starting to just get a little brown, so I wanted to get that liquid in there to just kind of stop that cooking a bit while I get the pineapple chopped up. So I'm putting this on a charcuterie board, but my goodness, there is so much that you could do with this chutney. I think that it would be pretty awesome on top of a burger. Served on like a Hawaiian king roll would be really yummy. Into my little recycle bowl. And remember, when you're cutting a pineapple, we just want to work all the way around that core there because you don't want any of that woody core in the middle. Okay, I'm just going to lay it down in sections and get this diced pretty finely because we don't want, again, big chunks. Smaller chunks are going to cook faster, more evenly. And also, since I am kind of putting this on like bread, you want it to be small enough that it's going to be scoopable. If you were using this for something else, I could see there could be reason to do this with a chunkier bite if you wanted. But for this, I want it to be pretty small. So I'm just going to run my knife back through all of this one more time. Break those pieces up. Now this is going to simmer for about an hour, so it's going to break down quite a bit and get a lot of yummy goodness in there. Kind of caramelize all of that pineapple. A little bit. Doesn't look too good. Cut it off. Okay, so we've got our onion and our garlic and our ginger and our habanero and pineapple and our orange juice. So we've got everything in, and so now this is just going to cook on low heat like I said, for about an hour. And I will be stirring it constantly. So once that juice kind of works itself off, I want to make sure that it does not scorch in the pan, because that would be sad. A little bit of that core left. And if you find yourself during a time of year where you cannot find any fresh pineapple, I feel like a frozen pineapple or even a canned would work in this recipe with no problem. So just find something that's maybe not packed in like syrup. You want it to be like packed in its own juices, would probably be best. Okay, so here is what we're working with. Should I take this over to this one? So we've got all of that yummy goodness with our onion and our ginger and all of that pineapple. So now I'm just gonna let this cook down, really reduce. I'm gonna turn up that heat just a tiny bit. There we go. Okay, so that is our step one. I'm gonna clean up a little bit and get our items over here for the shortbread. And I've made some substitutions there as well, but I'll walk you through them as I go. So the next thing that we're gonna make is called a cubeb spiced shortbread. So shortbread is really great because it's a super, super simple recipe. You're basically working with some butter, some sugar, and some flour. It doesn't have any leavener, doesn't have any eggs in it. So once we kind of get it finished, like it's not gonna really rise a whole bunch. So any lift that we're gonna get is gonna come out of the butter. But shortbreads are really great because you can flavor them any which way. So this is another great addition to a charcuterie board because it's a little bit savory and it's a little bit sweet. And I tend to put a combination of both items on my boards. And so this is nice because it walks the line between the two. So it does have, in order to do the cubeb spice, it's got a Ghana 5 spice that calls for 4 teaspoons of the ground cubeb pepper, which I could not find. I didn't do like a deep search or anything, but I looked online and some substitutions that it called for are ground pepper, black pepper, and allspice. So I'm gonna use both. So I've got about 2 teaspoons of ground black pepper, and I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of the ground allspice. And what's great is we're gonna make this mixture here, and then I can use it for this once I get it mixed up, but then the remainder of it I can keep in the cabinet the next time I want to use it. So she does have the recipe for this spice mix in her book. So you will reference one to the other. The next, excuse me, I'm totally cheating and using my phone over here for my recipes. The next thing we need is a teaspoon of nutmeg. And then 1 teaspoon of the ground ginger. Then it also calls for ground perquise, which they say if you don't have it, you can use a combination of cinnamon and cocoa. So I've already got that ready to go. So I have all of my ingredients in here, and so now I'm gonna mix it up. And then we're going to use, I believe, 1 teaspoon of this. 1.5 tablespoons. So. Okay, this chutney is over here bubbling away and it smells delicious. That initial heat has kind of cooked off, and so now it's just got this really sweet smell from the pineapple, and they're kind of getting translucent. It's cooking down. I'm already excited to try this. So in my mixer, excuse me, I am going to add the butter, which is 4.5 ounces. I measured that out this morning. And then the sugar, which is 2 ounces. And I'm going to turn this up on high because we want to get a fair amount of air into this butter and sugar because it is the only lift that we're going to get out of the cookie since there is no leavener. So you want it to get really fluffy. So I'm going to let it go, mix for a bit. I'll have to probably scrape it down and then mix a little bit more. This doesn't make a huge recipe, so this is easily, you do not have to use a stand mixer, it's just what we had available here. For this smaller amount, it might actually work better with a hand mixer, but I wouldn't do it by hand with a spoon. I think it's gonna work best if you have something that's really gonna aerate it. So now I'm going to add 1.5 tablespoons of this mixture that we just made. And it's got a really earthy aroma. You can smell a little bit of that cinnamon. The cocoa is going to give it a depth without adding a ton of flavor to it because there's not a great amount in here. But then the pepper, you know, just adds some really nice depth to it. So I'm pretty excited to try it. So I did 1.5 tablespoons of that in the mixture. I'm going to scrape this down one last time, and then I'm going to add our our 6 ounces of flour. And our vent has kicked on, so I'll try to take the volume up just a little bit. Excuse me. Okay, that has come together really nice. So again, just, 3 ingredients and then our flavors. So there we go. The dough's a little bit crumbly, but kind of to be expected with a shortbread. And it says to use an 8x10 dish. I'm going to use this little tart pan that I have. The bottom pops out of it. I just thought that this would make really cute long strips here that I can cut up. It does suggest that you have a little bit of flour on hand available if you need to knead it a bit or kind of work it in. It's always nice because I'm just going to press this into place with my fingers, and if it starts to stick too much, that flour is nice to just kind of dip your fingers into and press it all down. And if you want this to be like a thicker little shortbread stick, we can just kind of use only a portion of the pan. If you want it to be thinner, it'll be crisper, we can use the whole pan. I think I'm going to use about like 2/3 of it because I want it to be kind of thick, but not really thick.
Kelly, let me ask you a couple of questions here. If you adjust the thickness, do you have to adjust the temperature or the cooking time?
So the cooking time for sure. So it is 350 is the baking temperature, and I think it's like an 18 to 20 minutes. Let's see what she's got recommended. We're gonna bake for 17 to 18 minutes. So I will start checking this a little earlier than that. Which I always like to do anyway. The first time I bake something, I'll start checking before. It's just really important because you never know like what conditions the original recipe was baked under, whether how their oven works. I recently got a new oven and I'm having to adjust bake times just a little bit here and there to account for the difference between the two. So this is going to go into the oven, 350. We're going to start it at about 15 minutes. This is an adjustment to the recipe. I'm just going to hit the top of this with a little bit of a honey butter. And then it's going to get some granulated sugar, or this is actually, it's not a granulated sugar, it's a little bit of a chunkier sugar, it's a sanding sugar. In her recipe, she calls for a little granulated sugar on top, but the heat of the oven will often cook that down and you won't see it. So I just put the sanding sugar on. It's just going to add a little bit of a crunch. Depending on what you're doing with this, you could easily add some like flaky sea salt as well. I think would be delicious if you really wanted to kind of push it into a savory side of things, but the sugar is going to kind of bump it back to that sweet side. Back into the oven. All right, so it's the holidays. This will air officially right between Christmas and New Year's. And I mean, what can I say? Charcuterie boards are really popular right now. I think they're just, some people laugh it off and say they're adult Lunchables, but really, it's a really great way to feed a lot of people. You can graze, you can have a variety of things for everyone. So I really love them. What I typically do to start out is select a board based on the number of people that I'm going to be serving, because it's very easy to get out of control. And if you pick a board that's the right size, it kind of gives you some parameters to go from. So if we're gonna say that this is a board for two, this would be like dinner for my husband and I, which is what we did last night while we watched Dexter. So I'm gonna start with my board. It's always important to have just a bunch of these bowls available. So this one is deep, and it is gonna be what I end up putting the chutney in. And this one is really cute, it's wider. It's great for pickles, so we've got that available as well. So I'm gonna start with our cheeses, and it's always good to just have something really, good basic cheese. So cheddar is key. Gotta have some cheddar cheese. And, cut. I think I need to sharpen my knife. Okay. So I like to, with my cheddar especially, go through, and you want to have a variety of shapes and sizes, so it's going to be visually interesting. I tend to start with the cheese, so we could leave this as rectangular. We could go back in and just cut those into little triangles, and then I'll alternate them when I lay them down, and it's just gonna give us some visual interest. Okay, so and I like to kind of hug when I know I'm gonna have some elements like this. Okay, so we've got that cheese. This right here is probably one of my favorite cheeses right now. It's from Trader Joe's. It's a Toscano cheese with a black pepper rind, which I really love. It is a little bit of a firmer cheese, more like Parmesan. So typically what I'll do, if this were going to be for a large party, I would unwrap this whole thing, cut some pieces off, and then just put the entire wedge on the board. But I find whatever I put on the board, we tend to eat. So if this were only for 2 people, I'm just going to add some slices, and I'm going to turn it so that that black pepper is on top so that you really get a good visual of it. So, yeah. This one is another little bit firmer cheese. It's a Chipotle. And this one, since it's firmer, I'm going to break it off little bits like this. May not be able to turn that down. I like it. The crumbled part is just kind of give you some visual interest that's a little different than the other cheeses. And this one's kind of more encouraging for snacking. Ooh, yeah. Just gonna give this chutney a stir. It's really working itself down. There's still a fair amount of liquid in it. I may end up straining some of that liquid off. Okay. So typically you want to have a combination of what I would call like our basic cheeses that are just crowd pleasers that everybody is going to like. So our cheddar, a firmer cheese with this kind of a Parmesan type, these two. I love brie. I don't think I've misplaced it. I have these itty bitty baby bries that are super adorable. My husband is not a big brie fan, but I am, so I always have a little baby brie on the board for myself. If you like goat cheeses are really great. You can get them in an assortment of flavors. You could do just, a basic goat cheese, or you could get something that's herbed or something that you can pair with sweet. I think that a goat cheese would play really nicely with this chutney that we're going to add. So now I am just slicing up some salami. I like to slice mine on a bias so that you get a little bit more surface to it as opposed to just straight across and flat. This is going to give you more cracker coverage, which is super important. So I'm just going to lay that out on my board. All right, okay. The next one here, some pepperoni, which I'm a huge fan of this. So I always tend to add just a little bit more because I want to make sure that I get plenty of it. Over here. And then this is a peppered salami, which again, I adore. It is my husband's favorite. I like that it adds some more visual interest here because we've got that pepper encrusted rind. Just add that there. And then have these little flat pinch bowls. So this one, I'm going to put some olives in. I should probably get a spoon for this. I'm not a fan of olives. A lot of people are. And it's really an important part of your board because you want to have salty, we want to add some sweet. This is going to kind of give us that bitter, umami flavor. Just kind of a nice variety here, because I think as you're snacking, you're like, oh, a little bit of cheese, which is kind of rich. And then, you're going to cut through all of that with that olive. These are some spicy pickles. So I will typically just come in and just rough. If I've got the spears, I'll run a knife through them. If I don't have spears, the smaller, the little gherkins are really cute to add to this as well. I tend to go with dill. You could do like the sliced dill pickles and then add some little sweet gherkins, would be very yummy. I've also got over here some larger sliced meats. So I really like the prosciutto because the prosciutto can be savory, but it also pairs really well with brie and some fig jam. So I'm just going to kind of fluff that up. Let's see, we'll go right here with it. Just kind of, again, some visual interest. Now, these are great. If you really want to get fancy, you could take a cup and we can make little roses out of them, but very simply, just fold them loosely into quarters, and that's going to give you some more kind of fluffy and volume to your board. And now, crackers. Just want to add just different types, also different shapes are important. So I'm gonna put these over here. Some of these little table crackers. Just kind of tuck those around. Okay, I'm starting to fill up my board here. So in addition to my olives, I like a little color and a little bit of freshness, so cherry tomatoes are really good to add. Getting warm here. That is getting very warm. Okay. Give that a little stir, sorry. So, last couple of things. I like to add nuts. These are everything but the bagel, with some cashews and almonds, and just kind of wherever you find a little space. When there's a little hole over here, just drop some nuts. Yum. And this is a mix of golden berries. If you have like larger pieces of apricots, those would be really nice as well. Again, just something kind of sweet that's gonna help break up the richness of all of this meat and cheese. So just a little pocket of berries over there. Chop and go. Get my board out of the way because we're done with that. Okay, and then just for a little bit of color, I am going to add some rosemary sprigs because I think that it's really pretty. They're totally not necessary, but it's going to be aromatic and just yummy. So. Okay. All right, so now all that this board is missing is our chutney, which I think we have, oh, it's the timer for my shortbread, so perfect. Let me see how that's looking. Okay. So after the 15 minutes, the shortbread is still, is a little soft, but it's pulling away from the edges pretty nice. So I think that once this sets up and kind of cools a bit, that we're gonna be good. So I'm just gonna leave that right there to cool down. Turn my oven off. And so here is the chutney. Spoon's a little warm, yeah. So we still have some liquid here. I think that this could probably cook down a little bit longer just to get that liquid off, but I'm just gonna scoop out all of the, I'm just gonna scoop the fruit out and leave those juices. If I were at home and I had all of my stuff, I would actually make a little bit of a slurry that has corn powder. Why am I just cornstarch? Can't think of it. Cornstarch and water. Mix that together and then pour that in. It's gonna thicken it up. So it's gonna help us kind of get that excess juice off. But I think if we continue to cook it down a little bit more, that it would be totally fine. But for our purposes, I'm gonna go ahead and put that in here. Oh my gosh, and I just love the color that it adds. Okay, so I don't need these bowls. Let's move them to the back. And let's see if I can kind of get a little bit of this cut out. Do not attempt at home trying to remove something from a pan that just came out of your oven moments ago. I assure you it will not go well. Okay, I'm just gonna put those right in my little bowl. And, okay, so I'm pretty excited. I want to give this a try. It is still very warm. This tastes seasonally appropriate. This is wonderful. This is very good. Okay, guys. And now for the chutney. Usually I'll toast up a little bit of some French loaf. Again, on the bias. A little bit of olive oil, just get that good crunchy bread. I think this would be amazing with that. I don't have that right now, so we're just gonna go on a cracker. It's also really beautiful. I love the pineapple flavor. It definitely has some heat. My mouth is warm, but it's not so hot that I don't want to take another bite, because I do want to take another bite. The onion and the garlic really kind of push it towards that savory direction. Oh my gosh, I'm super excited. We have lunch. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining me for our first session of Cooking the Books with Kelli. I'm so excited to be able to provide this for Cal's. Right now, the book is currently checked out. There are 2 copies in the system. I believe that one is on hold and one is checked out, because I tried to see if I could grab it for myself for today. But go ahead and put a reserve in for Zoe's Ghana Kitchen. And if you cook some stuff, let me know what you do. I'm really excited to see, because there were some other amazing recipes in the book. There was another chutney that was like a plantain that I thought would be a lot of fun. So, all right, join us next time. I'm not sure what we're gonna be doing yet, but I'm looking forward to it.